Here is the RAF Museum London's Typhoon 1B. It struggled as a high-altitude fighter, but down near the deck it was brutally fast, carried heavy cannon and rockets, and could tear into armour columns before they even knew it was coming. German troops learned to fear its engine note and feared it intensely, so much so that entire units abandoned vehicles or simply stopped moving in daylight because typhoons were reported nearby. And the most extraordinary part? Out of the thousands built, only one complete Typhoon remains today. MN235, the last physical witness to everything the Typhoon achieved. Hi folks, James here. So today we're diving into the remarkable life of that very aircraft, Hawker Typhoon Mark 1B MN235, the only complete Typhoon left anywhere on Earth. It's big, powerful, and has a history that zigzags from Britain to America and back again. But to understand why MN235 matters, we need to rewind to the Typhoon's earliest days. The Typhoon began with the Mark 1A, fitted with 12 303 machine guns, straight out of Hurricane doctrine. It delivered a lot of lead, but not enough punch for a war that was rapidly escalating in armour and air power. The RAF quickly shifted to the Mark 1B with 4 20mm Hispano cannons the armament MN235 carries. The 1A now looks like Typhoon's awkward initial stage, the transitional version before the aircraft really found its teeth. Now the Typhoon was designed and developed by Hawker as the intended successor to the Hurricane. But wartime production demands meant Hawker couldn't build them all. And the heavy lifting fell to the Gloucester Aircraft Company, who produced most of the Typhoons, including MN235. So while Hawker conceived it, Gloucester brought the Typhoon to life, rolling them out in the hundreds. But from the start, the Typhoon struggled to be the fighter it was meant to be. Its thick wing created drag. The Sabre engine was temperamental and the tail structure suffered dangerous failures, and its performance fell apart above 15,000 feet. Now pilots respected the speed at low level, but altitude was a liability, and by mid-1943 the RAF quietly abandoned the idea of the Typhoon as a high-altitude interceptor and embraced what the airframe was naturally brilliant at. This is where the Typhoon's real service history begins. In 1942 it was rushed into combat with mixed results, intercepting low-level Focke-Wulf 190s over the Channel and showing promise whenever the fight stayed close to the ground. But by 1943 squadrons were using it to provide rhubarb and roadstead missions, low-altitude attacks against trains, convoys and shipping, and it proved rugged, fast and brutally hard-hitting at these low-level operations. Now the true transformation came with the addition of the RP-3 rockets. Each Typhoon could carry 8, 4 under each wing, and although later analysis admitted they were inaccurate and difficult to aim, the impact was devastating. One RAF comparison famously noted that one Typhoon's firepower was equivalent to a destroyer's broadside. Rocket salvos shattered German positions, smashed gun batteries, and turned columns into scrap. And that isn't just technical data. We have testimony from people who were there. Horst Weber, an SS Panzer Grenadier, recalled the moment Typhoon struck his unit south of Arnhem. We had 4 Tiger tanks and 3 Panther tanks. We were convinced we would smash the enemy forces, but then Typhoons dropped these rockets on our tanks and shot all 7 to pieces. And we cried. We could see 2 black dots in the sky, and that always meant rockets. From the Allied perspective, the effect was equally awe-inspiring. Stuart Hills, a Sherman tank commander ambushed by a Tiger in Normandy, recorded, "The Typhoons came in very low and with a tremendous roar. The second plane scored a direct hit. The Tiger was lying on its side, minus its turret. It was an awesome display of firepower." Rocket accuracy in the field was low, but the psychological effect was enormous. German units abandoned tanks intact, movement ceased in daylight, morale fractured. The Typhoon didn't just destroy vehicles, it destroyed confidence. In many battles of 1944 to 45, its psychological shock did more than the physical damage. Meanwhile, MN235 never actually fired a shot. Shortly after being built, it was selected for evaluation by the US Army Air Forces, shipped to Wright Field, and flown under the code FE499 or T2491. The Americans were considering adopting it, but they already had the P-47 Thunderbolt and decided they didn't want the logistical nightmare supporting two different types of aircraft. So MN235 only flew for a few hours before a minor accident grounded it. That accident ended its operational potential, but saved it, because what happened at the end of the war, the Typhoon, despite being the most important close air support aircraft in the British arsenal, having spearheaded the Normandy breakout, struck at Falaise, battered retreating columns across France in the day of the Typhoon, and supported ground forces all the way to Germany, its reputation had grown, but also so had its evolutionary successor, the Hawker Tempest, originally known as the Typhoon II. This had learnt from the Typhoon's limitations, and the Tempest introduced a thinner wing, clear aerodynamics, improved visibility, and transformed the rough blueprints of the Typhoon into one of the finest piston fighters ever built. The Typhoon had been the hammer, the Tempest became the rapier. Now, after the war, because of this, the Typhoon was rapidly retired. It had been designed for speed and firepower, not longevity, and there was no peacetime role for it, particularly with its replacement available. There was no export market, no post-war upgrades. Thousands were scrapped, and MN235 alone remained, stored tucked away in the US until 1968, when it returned to Britain as a gift to the RAF Museum. Restoration teams rebuilt it over several decades, replacing missing sections and preserving what survived. Today, it stands not just as a museum exhibit, but as the final surviving witness to a type that helped break the German army's ability to maneuver in daylight. Now, what makes MN235 even more symbolic is the Typhoon's name didn't die with it. The RAF resurrected the name in the 21st century for its modern multi-role fighter, the Eurofighter Typhoon. Sleek, fast, incredibly agile and digitally advanced, today's Typhoon carries the name of its World War II ancestor, a tribute to the original aircraft's raw power, low-level prowess and battlefield impact. So when an RAF Eurofighter Typhoon takes to the sky today, the name echoes the roar of that Sabre engine that once terrified armoured columns across Europe. And that's why MN235 matters. It isn't just the last of its kind. It's the last chapter of a story that stretches from Normandy to the digital cockpits of the modern RAF. And when you stand in front of MN235 at the RAF Museum London, you're not just looking at a relic, you're looking at a legend, and the only Typhoon left that can tell that story.